Okay, Angus, thank you very much for your hospitality here, and it's now, what's it, it's Tuesday the 8th of March, and I nearly said 1916, shows my age, 2016, and we are in the Misty Isle, the Isle of Skye, Glenuig, and the Pipers'Persuasion would like to thank Dr. Angus MacDonald, Angus, for having us here for an interview. But it's not an interview, it's a conversation.
Very good.
We're just going to sit and have a wee chat about your piping life. And so without any further ado, I'm just going to ask you where you were born. I understand Glenuig and Moidart figure somewhere, but I was corrected by your brother Alan, who said I wasn't born in Glenuig, so that was my first error. So I'm not going to assume anything. Where were you born yourself?
Well, I actually was born in Glenuig.
In Moidart?
In the house I was brought up in.
Aye. What size of house was it?
Very small house, just one big bedroom, a wee room in the middle, and then kitchen, dining room, everything else. You know?
Would you like to tell the people watching us who are away in the Pacific, South America, literally, no, joking aside, Norway or Germany or wherever, and they don't know Glenuig, could you just paint them a wee pen picture there?
Well, from our house we would look out and we would see the Minch, and across from our house we would see the Isle of Egg, and behind it the Isle of Rum. To the north, the Sound of Arisaig and the hills of Skye. South of us was Harachgal and Loch Shiel. And then the loch that we were at the mouth of a loch, Loch Eilert, which was about 8 miles long, and was where my father had the ferry, which supplied Glenuig before the road came in 67, I believe.
Quite late then, before you had a road. And were you just wandering pathways at that point, up to that point, or what?
There was a path which on one side went to Kinloch Moidart, and there was a shop there, so we used to reckon we could get to the shop and back without the ice cream melting on a Sunday. And the other side was Loch Eilert. It was much further, but that's where the ferry boat went.
Aye.
And we tended to use the boat back and forward.
Okay. Where did you go to school?
So initially I went to school in Glenuig till I was 9.5, and then went off to Dunblane, right in central Scotland, Queen Victoria School.
Yeah.
That was a boarding school, and very much different from Glenuig School.
Did you do any piping before you arrived there?
My introduction to piping was one winter when the fellow who worked with my father on the boat disappeared after a cattle sale up in Fort William, and was never seen or heard of again.
My goodness.
A few days later, after a gale, a young fellow came into the bay in Glenuig with his boat. He had lost a lot of his gear, and my father offered him a job. Man Peter Perrin, this was a 23-year-old. He had done his national service with Ian McFadden, John McDougall and others. And one night he just took out the pipes and played us a tune. And that was the cue for me to start piping.
So what age?
I would be 8 or 9 then.
Okay, so about a year or so before you went away to Queen Victoria
That's right.
School. And your brothers, Alan and Ian, you marked off camera earlier that
Alan was 2 years younger than me, and Ian was a fair bit younger, about almost 10 years younger than that.
So they wouldn't be into piping at that point?
Alan probably started it, but I always remember writing out lessons for him from Queen Victoria School and sending them home and telling them what to do.
Excellent. That's terrific.
But my mother's people were pipers, and there was a chanter in the house. My father's people were pipers going further back.
Uh-huh.
My grandfather in Uist was always wanting us to pipe, you know, and that was a great incentive. His son, he had two sons. One of them died of cancer at a very young age, and the other one was killed 8 days before St. Valerie.
So,
And his pipes, well, that was St. Valerie, where the 51st Division were
yes.
trapped, and they spent the rest of the war in prisoner of war camps. Donald
Yes.
MacLeod from Lewis and others.
Yes.
And a man who served with my uncle then was William MacDonald in Inverness.
Mm-hmm.
And he eventually invited me to come for Pibroch lessons.
So
But,
what was his nickname? Willie MacDonald?
He was Watery Willie because he worked with the water board.
Uh-huh, aye.
But others told me also the story about when my uncle was killed, his pipes were taken apart, and each of the other soldiers took a piece of his pipe to the prisoner of war camp, and they put them together, reassembled them, so they had a set of pipes in the Stalag, whatever it was.
Donald McLean was there, wasn't he?
Donald MacLean.
Big Donald.
Yes.
She was there. Because he taught Johnny Chiquare, who was my first pipe major in the Paisley British Legion when I was 15. There's quite a history of pipers and piping just at the beginning of the war there. Some got away and others didn't. So that's interesting. So were you actually playing pipes then before you went to Queen Victoria School?
No, I was just playing the chanter at
Chanter.
that stage. And
Okay. So you go to Queen Victoria School and understand there's Jack Mackenzie there.
initially there was a pipe major, Sanderson,
Right.
who kind of continued my teaching then, and
Mm-hmm.
he was there for about 2 years, and then John Mackenzie from Kintyre,
Mm-hmm.
Pipe Major John Mackenzie, ex-Argyll's pipe major and a very good teacher.
And he was well known to many of the top pipers between his lessons down at the Mill of Kintyre and also the lessons at Queen Victoria.
When he was in Queen Victoria School, he had just come back from a mining job in Africa,
Mm-hmm.
and so he came back and he went to Robert Reid for Pibroch. So he was going to Robert Reid as he was teaching me anyway.
Aye. And how long did you get lessons from him then?
So I was in Queen Victoria School from 62 till 1970.
Mm-hmm.
So apart from the first 2 years, John was teaching me then.
And did you compete when you were under his umbrella, so to speak?
There was the usual school competitions, of course,
Uh-huh.
but we did go off to the Scottish Championship and Scottish Juvenile Championship, I think they were
that
called.
was the pipe band that they formed.
There was a competition. Scottish Pipers Association ran
Okay.
a competition for solo young pipers,
Uh-huh.
which I think is still.
I think
On
that's
the
still
go.
to go yet. Uh-huh.
And then the Highland Games at home, which was the start of.
Uh-huh. Did you win prizes at that point?
Oh yeah, I used to pick up prizes, and
Uh-huh.
there were much more. Competing for us was part of the Cayley scene, especially after the games. You know.
Aye, so what was your leanings? What type of music did you enjoy playing the most at that time?
I think playing for dances.
Right.
There was a good dance band in Lochilert, and when the road came through to Glenuig,
Mm-hmm.
Farracher McRae, who led that band, would call us and invite us to wherever it was, Arisig, Malig, Aharachgal,
Uh-huh.
to come and play for the Eightsome Reels and Strip the Willows while they had a wee break to go for a dram, you know.
Aye. It's a very atmospheric place to play Moider, Arnmark and all this. Kinloch Moider is a famous Pibroch, and various other pipe tunes were popping into my head as you were mentioning various names of places round about where you were brought up.
Yeah, there were lots of amateur players, if you like, people who didn't compete much, but they were just crazy about piping, and it was the instrument to play in the area.
Okay.
Although a lot of the young fellows were converting to accordion and fiddle at that time.
So quite a few dances and ceilidhs mustered together. And did you have a village hall, or what did you have near you?
There was a hall in Glenuig which was quite famous for its dances.
Yeah.
Because especially before the road, people had to walk over from Kinlochmidert or come down in a boat from Lochilard.
Right.
And there were memorable dances.
That's fantastic. I saw a programme just a few years ago of yourself and Alan and Ian probably playing in the same hotel. It's a programme that was recorded for television. Your history and one thing and that. Was that the same hall again?
Well, it was a hall that's been since built and was
on the same location.
50 yards from our own house.
Yes, aye. What to anybody else apart from the chap Mackenzie at that point, or did you take further lessons?
At that stage, until I left Queen Victoria School, no, that was the teaching I had.
Got a very good grounding.
Yeah.
What pipes were you playing then?
Well, a set of pipes that my uncle had in Uist, although they weren't the set that they took to the prisoner of war camp. But that set, another Uist piper took over his duties when he was shot. They took these pipes, as I said, to the prisoner of war camp. Now, after the war, they went back to Uist. And the piper who had them was asked to lend them to somebody for a wedding or a funeral, and which he did, but he didn't get them back, and the man died, so he thought, I better go and pick up my pipes. And in the meantime, some people had come up from, relatives had come up from Glasgow to clear out the house, and
terrible people from Glasgow.
They had a big bonfire going, and
away.
The pipes were there.
Dear.
But there was another set that I got from Uist at that stage.
Whereabouts in Uist?
In Kilfeather, next to Dalibara.
So South Uist then?
South Uist, yeah.
Big place for piping over all the decades, eh?
Big.
Did you do much piping in Uist at all?
We were sent there every summer for a couple of weeks, and in fact one summer when I was in school in Dunblane, everybody else at home ended up with a whooping cough. So I was sent to Uist for the duration of the summer holidays, and was influenced then by the pipers I was hearing. And
so anybody noteworthy?
Well, there was the Scots, Adam Scott and John Scott.
Police pipe band.
Rory Rochan and Shawnee would be home.
Shawnee home from
for the Glasgow Fair.
Aye.
And lots of other pipers you wouldn't normally hear of.
You pick up quite a bit from them too.
I probably did, but the emphasis then was taking it from the book, which was probably a big mistake.
Well,
rather than using.
You're talking about the Pibroch from
light music and Pibroch,
I
think it's much more important to be using the ear before the book.
And bring the music out. And music is a general guide, that's your view.
Yeah.
And that's important because you can listen to a tune right out about and it doesn't do anything for you at all.
Exactly.
When did you start studying, doing medical studies, and where did you do that?
So in 1970 I went off to Glasgow University and was there it was a 6-year course then, 1970 to 76, and at that time Roddy MacDonald from South Uist invited me to come along and get some tuition, especially on Kelmore. So I spent until I left for Canada in 84. I went to Rory Rochan. From the day I went to Glasgow, basically in 1970.
So, how many years did you study in Glasgow then?
I was 6 years at the university, and then I was working in hospitals for 5 or 6 years.
So that was more or less all the 70s that took up your professional time in Glasgow.
Yes.
And during that time, you're still piping, but to the same intensity?
They came and went, and obviously with studies, especially at the end, having to sit finals, and piping had to take a back seat.
And I understand you took an interest in groups. Would that be during the 70s as well, playing with groups?
In the early 70s, there were the first Gaelic programmes coming out on television. They were half an hour to an hour long.
And that's Alba.
Programmes like, it was before that was BBC Scotland, programmes like Songs of Scotland, Sheher Behe. And I was lucky enough to get slots on these. But they were bringing over groups from Ireland at that time, and the Irish scene was very vibrant, especially with the Chieftains and Paddy Maloney with the pipes. Then Bothy Band with Paddy Keenan, and there was really nothing similar over here. So Neil Fraser, who was the producer of these programs, asked me to come and join some other musicians, and we made a bit of a band which just lasted for the programs. But there was great players like Alistair Fraser, the young fiddler then, Charlie Cowie, a very good fiddler, John Carmichael on the accordion, and Alistair MacDonald guitar. So we did a few programs with that group.
What pipes were you playing for when you were playing? Was it just a normal chanter, or did you play a lower pitched chanter, or how did you blend in there?
We started off with just one of these small pipes that you blew into, but inevitably there was problems with that, especially in the studio when all the lights went on, the heat, the pipes would go off quickly, they would get wet. And so we started using the big pipe.
And how did that work?
Yeah, mostly it worked. I didn't question what keys they were playing. They tuned to me.
Maybe folk wouldn't be that fussed about it at that point. But still be very good music. And so, okay, that was the first sort of taster. Where did you move on from there? Interestingly, people, we've got sitting in the sidelines my colleague Chris, and Chris is going to help me out here with the groups, because he's got a wee bit of knowledge, apart from helping me with cameras and all the rest of it. He's got a wee bit of knowledge about Angus and groups. Chris, what's your question there?
My question is, you were formed because Scotland didn't have the equivalent of the Irish bands. How much did the Irish bands influence what you then went on to play? So, Paddy and the Irish pipers, how much were they influencing your style, and what type of music you then produced with the other guys?
Yeah, these groups and other musicians from Ireland were a big influence all through the 70s. What they were doing in Ireland with traditional music, and it wasn't competition stuff. It was just playing good reels, jigs. We went into their repertoire and introduced that even to the pipe band I ended up in, British Caledonian Airways. And after that experience with the BBC programmes, a few of us got together and formed a kind of acoustic group which was called Alapa. It had Tony Cuff, who later went on to Ocean, Sean O'Rourke, who was in a group called the JSD Band, who were quite big in Glasgow, sort of, I don't know what you would call them, rock at that time. Mike Ward on fiddle and myself on small pipes.
Yeah. Did you play any other instrument apart from the pipes?
Not then. I wouldn't say a mouth organ was.
No,
but I went on to play fiddle, but that was later on after going to Cape Breton.
Not at that time?
No.
Okay. What other groups did you become involved in?
Well, these were the two main groups, but I dropped out of Alapa because of sitting my final exams in '76.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being asked to another group, or I mean, the Clutha wanted me to join, but I just couldn't travel with any folk groups, and I think Tom Johnson joined them.
Yeah.
And there were other groups starting to play with pipes, especially in the early 80s, like the Tannahills.
You do the odd spot with people though, and rather than a regular gig, yeah?
Yeah, we tended to do. I got kind of known by the television programs, and that was good for supplementing the student grant.
Absolutely, it'd be terrific. Does that really cover the groups then?
The only thing I was going to say about that, so you didn't really have any role models in Scotland to sort of at all in terms of, because most of the bands that then went on to be, you know, to create the Scottish sound, you know,
Yeah.
pipe led, kind of happened pretty much after that. The Tannies, the
Yeah.
Whistle Pinkies, Austin, these kind of bands. So how did you
Yeah.
think? Because putting the pipes into that kind of group was. Do you think that might affect how you were seen by the pipers? Or did you not even think about that?
That wasn't a concern. I mean, my experience had been playing with local dance bands at home, so I was playing, you know, what we played in the West Coast, and I didn't want to be playing Irish stuff. I was, you know, I personally wanted to play that stuff that we were playing at home, you know, and stuck to that, although we were learning Irish repertoire as well. For any sort of broadcasting, it was Scottish, Highland.
Yeah, so the sort of model was, okay, we'll bring the pipes in because that's what they do in Ireland. They've got the Glenuig pipes on the go, but we'll put our own Scottish flavour on that and take it from there, and effectively set the tone for what was then to become the Scottish sound through the next 30 years.
Possibly, yeah. Certainly Tony Cuff had a similar. Tony Cuff's brother was a piper, you know, and he knew pipe tunes, and he loved to play the guitar stuff and piping on the guitar. Yeah. Guitar. Yeah.
Okay. When did you go to Cape Breton?
I went to Cape Breton well, first of all, we started visiting Cape Breton. My brother and I went over in when would it be, 1969.
Mm-hmm.
So the Cape Breton of then was a very different place. You know, there was lots of Gaelic, lots of fiddle music. Piping was okay then. You know, there were some good young pipers around. And I thought, well, of course, I met a young lady who was my wife.
Aye. So that was another attraction, yeah.
So we went there after getting enough experience in the Glasgow hospitals. This is in a rural area, and also a rural hospital that we as general practitioners ran.
Uh-huh.
So it was busy. It got busier and busier, and eventually, with a young family, there was no way out. If you live in the country there, they know where you live. They'll appear at your door
all the time.
And you know, the only way to get out of it was to
jump in the car and go away for the day.
Well, you could do that certainly, but
aye.
For family life, it was there just wasn't much time, you know.
To explain to people the geography of Cape Breton, northern tip of Nova Scotia, is that correct?
Northeast tip, yeah. Connected to mainland Nova Scotia by a causeway since 1952.
Uh-huh.
And but still very much island mentality, and a lot of people were, you know, descendants of the immigrants who went over during the clearances and the famines in Scotland.
Why Cape Breton? That's the connotations of Brittany or something like that. Was there any French people had come across?
There had been, and there still is, a big French Acadian population there.
Yes.
Whose who often ended up playing very good Scottish music.
So did that, over the years, influence your music?
I think yes, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So what did you take from, what are the highlights of the music there? Was it, could you describe that to us?
A lot of it was dance-led again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the music followed the dance, and it had to be good.
And what kind of dancing was it?
It was they would do sort of set dances something like they had at home.
Mm-hmm.
They also had a very lively step dance tradition, which, reading all the old evidence, a lot of it came from Moidart and Uist.
Uh-huh.
And some of there were professional teachers who came from Moidart and Uist who went round the houses and taught people how to do the step dancing. And they step danced to strathspeys and reels, and then in the village halls they would do these dances.
And the strathspeys were played, some folk would feel, in quite a different fashion from the way strathspeys are expressed maybe in Scotland just now. Would that be a fair statement?
I suppose you need to go back to really what is a strathspey, and I mean
precisely. Yeah.
You know, it used to be called a strathspey reel.
Mm-hmm.
So it was real time, but with an accent, you know, cut and dotted.
Aye.
And there are as many different ways to play a strathspey, depending on what. There's dance strathspeys, there's performance strathspeys, which has really become what the strathspeys that you hear in the piping circle. They're performance strathspeys.
So your Blair Drummond and Piper's Bonnet and that sort of thing, you would describe as more performance strathspey.
They have become performance strathspeys, but
Uh-huh.
but in Cape Breton and in Gaelic music they were dance strathspeys.
So Bog and Lochan, for instance, maybe took life in an earlier form, and just what we're
a
talking about.
very popular tune in Cape Breton was Bog and Lochan.
Aye.
And played up tempo with much lively. I mean, people would say, "Well, what is it that makes them different?" And I would say they're wilder, they're more exciting. It wasn't just tempo though. The whole scale that they used. Sometimes they followed the pipe scale pretty close, but they also hit some notes higher than in the usual Western scale that we know. You know,
Yeah.
a fraction higher, which just gives an excitement and drive.
I'm going to take advantage of your good hospitality and ask you if you could maybe just give us a wee 2 or 3 bar demonstration of the difference between the Cape Breton style of expressing a strathspey and the modern Scottish way that he accepted. And perhaps a good example, as we discussed a second ago, is Bog and Lochan. Bog and Lochan.
Well, I suppose what you'd hear in competition over here is etc. You know.
Aye.
But on the fiddle over there, it'd be
Aye, so it's more free flowing, isn't it?
yeah, it's got almost an extra beat.
Aye. Uh-huh.
Or beating twice as much as you would in a competition type.
And so people are step dancing in time to that.
Yeah.
And I saw an example of it years ago on television, and folk just standing with their hands on their side, the way that they do the step dancing in Ireland. Would that be a fair comment?
In traditional Ireland, not the sort of display dancing, which was the kind of equivalent of the Highland dancing that we have.
Mm-hmm.
But the old style, as they called it, close to the floor dancing was what they did. And so when they did it, and kind of 8-some reel, 4-some reel, they would be step dancing all the way through it, you know. But then they often did it as a display dance as well.
Aye. And so that was a spay reel, if you like,
Yeah.
Bogalochen. And what were the actual reels? Were they pointed or round?
They're pretty round, yeah.
Pretty round,
Yeah.
and where you were
They were
listening
much
to.
less accented
Aye.
than
And
you'd hear.
played at a higher pace, perhaps?
Again, depends on the situation. For a dance, they tended, much like we'd do for a need some reel here.
Aye, so you're well up tempo.
But there was a lot of, listening, a lot of just sitting listening to fiddle tunes in
Mhm.
ceilidhs and house
Mhm.
parties. And the house parties, ceilidhs were very much part of the scene there, which has kind of gone from here.
So did quite a bit of singing and dancing, piping, a good mix of everything in the house party. Would that be
Yeah,
the thing?
very much the fiddle was the predominant instrument. So
Was it?
the only way to get into the scene properly over there and learn the repertoire was to get in playing the fiddle. And so I started a Tuesday night group got all the local fiddlers and
Aye.
hid among them and picked up what they were doing.
So did you actually play a few tunes on the fiddle? That's where you picked it up there?
I started there,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you still play yet?
I still, I
Fantastic.
kind of gave it up after coming back here. I
Aye.
decided to concentrate on piping, but back to scraping away and making a fool of myself on the fiddle.
Now, that's fine. So it's the house parties, that's the dancing, general culture. Did they have their own style of songs, or was it songs straight back from the history of Scotland, or did they have their own? Did they go their own way with the song?
The song tradition had changed slightly. There was a lot of the old songs some of them that didn't survive over here were still in Cape Breton. But one way they preserved them was having these milling frolics, which basically were what they did the Oran Loy, where they milled the tweed, and a lot of the songs were sort of converted into Oran Loy, or walking songs,
Aye.
walking the tweed song.
Uh-huh.
So that became the focus, and some of the tunes were therefore converted into walking songs.
What time signature would that be?
A little bit like Strathspey, but they were in 2/2 or 4/4.
Right. Okay. Uh-huh. That's interesting. So, in amongst all this, you must have still the hankering for competitive piping. And indeed, I understand that you were successful over in Canada. Can you describe some of that for me?
I used to come back over here just once a year. I would go to Oban and Inverness, and it was an incentive to keep the pipe up to a certain standard and continue learning Kelmore, which was where I was in Cape Breton, and even Nova Scotia. There wasn't a whole lot of piping, and there certainly were no paper players. I would keep in touch with. At that stage, I was going to Willie MacDonald in Inverness.
Okay. And so we'll come back on to your discuss the success at Ayrshire gathering and the Inverness. What success did you have there?
Over the years, a little bit of success, and we had won the Oban gold medal, and then the former winners there twice, and the medal in Inverness, and the former winners twice.
Oh, that's excellent.
And then when I came over here, got back into other competitions like the Silver Chanter.
Aye. We'll come back to that in a wee second or two. Just while we're on Oban, for instance, what tune did you play for the gold medal?
The McSwan of Roic.
Great tune.
Mm-hmm.
Aye, fantastic tune. So it's quite a tricky tune too, the ground first variation.
It's a musical tune though.
Yeah. Aye, beautiful.
And
Who taught you that one?
Initially Roddy MacDonald, and
Uh-huh.
then I went over it with Willie in Inverness.
Aye. A big tune for the gold medal, eh? And former winners, any particular tunes stand out there?
In Inverness, I suppose the MacLeod of Talisker Salute was
Uh-huh.
the one I would
Aye.
be happiest with, I would say.
Yes. Aye. Did you win the medal with that at Inverness?
I won the medal with Cantarbert's Fancy,
Uh-huh.
and I haven't played it since.
That's funny. That's two tunes that you've mentioned there. I've heard them, but not a lot. McSwan Heroics gets played all the time, of course. But for your in Canada, I understand you won medals there, is that correct?
I sometimes went up to Ontario and played.
Uh-huh. And
Especially when they had the Canadian medal, and they usually stuck to the same tunes as they were having in Oban and Inverness.
same set tunes.
Same set tunes. It was a method of trying them out. And
Uh-huh. So how did you get on with that?
yeah, I won the Canadian gold medal.
Playing
My king has landed in my door.
Mind it. Very appropriate too, eh? Aye. That was at Glenfinnan, wasn't it? He landed.
Well, he landed actually in Loch Nanoa and then came over to Glenuig and then made his way to Glenfinnan.
There you are. Was he in at your house first
He
before?
probably was actually.
Aye, there you go.
Oh, and Moyduk was a hotbed of Jacobite.
Who were the judges for in Canada at that time?
They always brought over somebody
Did
along
they?
with a Canadian judge.
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to think who it was. I think it could have been Tom Spears.
Uh-huh. So, well-run competitions.
Yeah, very, very, very much so. And far better than the competitions we run over here. I mean,
Aye.
and the competitors over there were very good competitors. They
Yes.
taught us a lot.
And
when they started coming over to Scotland to play.
Yes, and very earnest about their art and
Everything was well rehearsed and not like the MacDonald boys up partying, caling all night before the gold medal. These boys were asleep. And
aye. So do you remember any that competed along with you in Canada at that time?
oh yeah, there were the usual Jim McGilvery and,
Uh-huh.
and Livingston.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of good players.
Aye.
And of course they would come over too. And
They come
compete
over
in the
and they
medals.
come over for lessons as well, so they
Yeah.
were well up with the art. So they were very, very decent. What years were that?
Probably 1975 or so
Uh-huh.
till 1981, I think.
And just before you left to go to
Yeah,
Canada?
or about a year before I left.
Uh-huh. And were you just with the one band?
I joined the British Caledonian Airways, and I mean, unashamedly, because of the perks of flying
Ah,
here and there to do burn suppers, and it was
A lot of good
band.
gigs
We
too.
were in second grade,
uh-huh.
and a lot of good players, and so through second grade the band was playing.
They had two bands. They had one in Scotland and one in London, is that correct?
Yeah, and basically I joined the one in Scotland was being phased out. And I don't know the politics that were going on, but
Uh-huh.
we used to fly down to London on a Sunday morning to practice.
Aye. And who was leading that one?
Richardson, Bob Richardson.
Uh-huh.
But a lot of good solo players in the band.
Yeah. Could you name 2 or 3?
There, Pipe Major Angus MacDonald, Pipe Major Callum Campbell, Joe Wilson, Tom Johnston
Right.
plays now,
Uh-huh.
Hugh McInnes,
Hugh McInnes as well. My goodness.
my brother joined as well.
Aye. So, did you do much travelling over the world with them? I know certain folk went out to Brazil and all this kind of
We
thing.
did. We went to places you would never go on holiday. a lot of West African countries like Liberia and Nigeria.
How did that go down with the locals? I mean,
Great. I used
they
to,
enjoyed it.
oh yeah, I used to enjoy playing and having them join in this.
And did you go to Russia or anything like that?
Went to South America several times.
Mm-hmm.
That was a great opportunity.
Aye.
But then, again, that took up all holiday time, and
Aye.
while I was trying to keep a job going in the hospitals in Glasgow, and I decided that
I know it was fairly brief, but what years were that?
probably 1975 or so
Uh-huh.
till 1981, I think.
And just before you left to go to
Yeah,
Canada?
or about a year before I left.
Uh-huh. And were you just with the one band?
I joined the British Caledonian Airways, and I mean, unashamedly, because of the perks of flying
Ah.
here and there to do burn suppers, and it was
A lot of good
band.
gigs
we
too.
we were in second grade, you know,
Uh-huh.
and a lot of good players, and so through second grade the band was playing.
They had 2 bands. They had one in Scotland and one in London. Is that correct?
Yeah, and basically I joined the one. The one in Scotland was being phased out. And I don't know the politics that were going on, but
Uh-huh.
we used to fly down to London on a Sunday morning to practice.
Aye. And who was leading that one?
Richardson, Bob Richardson.
Uh-huh.
But a lot of good solo players in the band.
Yeah. Could you name 2 or 3?
There, Pipe Major Angus MacDonald, Pipe Major Callum Campbell, Joe Wilson, Tom Johnston
Right.
plays now,
Uh-huh.
Hugh McInnes,
Hugh McInnes as well. My goodness.
my brother joined as well.
Aye. So, did you do much travelling over the world with them? I know certain folk went out to Brazil and all this kind of thing.
We did. We went to places you would never go on holiday. a lot of West African countries like Liberia and Nigeria.
How did that go down with the locals? I mean,
Great. I used
they
to,
enjoyed it.
oh yeah, I used to enjoy playing and having them join in this.
And did you go to Russia or anything like that?
Went to South America several times.
Mm-hmm.
That was a great opportunity.
Aye.
But then, again, that took up all holiday time, and
Aye.
while I was trying to keep a job going in the hospitals in Glasgow, and I decided that I was never getting home, never coming to Uist. So I came up on holiday to Uist and home, and was quite taken aback with the lack of music. The young people were not playing any instruments, very few young pipers, so I went to Ireland to see what was happening there, try to understand what had brought their music to the fore.
Yeah.
And there was a model of a sort of teaching,
Mm-hmm.
community teaching in Connemara.
Okay.
And I was speaking to Roddy MacDonald, who was teaching me at the time. His wife from Uist as well. Her nephew was a priest out in Uist and very good with community and getting people to do things. So I met him in
Do you
Glasgow.
remember his name?
Colin McInnes,
Mhm.
Colin McInnes, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I said we need to do something start this, teaching in the islands. And at that time he got shifted to Barra.
Okay.
So our plans changed from US
To Barra.
to Barra.
Mm-hmm.
And we put on the first Fèis, the Barra Fèis,
Uh-huh.
and that has taken off.
Okay,
basically
what
since
did that involve at that time?
Well, we
What was the fish?
we recruited a whole load of musicians to come and teach, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But the Arts Council weren't happy to give money purely for a teaching organisation, and they said it had to be a performance occasion. So every night of the week we put on a dance or a ceilidh or with different themes, and the Arts Council put money towards that. It allowed us to teach for the
During the day?
Yeah.
Aye. How many people turned up initially?
It was quite amazing, the first one, that almost all the kids went back to school for a week at
Aye.
the start of their summer holidays.
Uh-huh.
And so it's happened every year since then, and of course the Fèis is all over the country now.
They're very, very popular. And have you been... are you still involved with Barra, or did you cease?
So I went off to Canada
Okay.
then, and
Did you ever go back when you...
yes, I went back on the 20th anniversary.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And what about other places? Did you visit there to see?
So I haven't been involved in any other
Aye.
Fèis since then.
Mhm.
So the Fèis movement is now it's a phenomenon,
Yeah.
right? Has been for. How do you look back over the success of that then for over the last 20, 25 years?
I mean, I think it's went far beyond what we had thought it would do. We thought we'd be able to have one in Barra and then set them up throughout the islands over time, but they took off and they're right across Scotland now. And they've kept to what we had planned in the first place, that it would be strongly centred on Gaelic and Gaelic music.
That's good legacy to have from one Fèis.
So I think
Right. Yeah.
It's far more important than any medals that I had.
It's always great to give youngsters the opportunity of learning your instrument, passing on your thoughts and everything else to them. And indeed, piping in Scotland is really reaching a very, very high standard, especially amongst young people. I think you'd agree with that. Using Barra, for instance, on Saturday, it's all young people that, relatively young people, that won the first prizes.
Right.
Finlay Johnson, Callum Bowman, and a couple of Alistair Henderson.
Right. Yeah.
They're all to the fore now, and that's it speaks volumes for the amount of good tradition they've had. That they're at the top, and it's not just by chance, and they're staying at the top. So you're certainly sowing very, very good seeds there. You come back from Canada, and where did you settle?
Came straight to a job in Portree, which was something similar to what I was doing in Canada, general practice with a hospital, and joined a team rather than come back as a solo GP.
Yeah. So busy time then.
So it continued.
Aye.
That's inevitable with the job.
And your piping grew and grew. Can you give me an example? You mentioned Glenuig a second ago. I kind of put you off, but maybe tell us about did you win the Glenuig medal?
And the Glenuig medal
And then the silver chanter.
and the clasp to the Glenuig medal and the silver chanter. Yeah.
Aye. Glenuig medal, describe the tunes that's got to be submitted there. to people?
Dunvegan medal is they want you to submit McCrimmon tunes,
6.
and for the Dunvegan medal, there's some of them are the bigger tunes are excluded. But then once you win that, you have to play in a clasp, and they have the
Bigger tunes. And
McCrimmon
McSwan or
tunes.
Roig being a typical example of the bigger
yeah.
tunes.
Yeah.
Right. And round about, I know they've moved times over the years, but at Dunvegan Castle there was instituted a small competition competing for Silver Chanter. Could you describe that event?
The Silver Chanter was started. I think Dame Flora and Seamus McNeill and John McFadden were the instigators, and to try and attract pipers to come to Portree to compete at the games.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been a success, no doubt. Initially, it was broadcast by the BBC, and that was quite an attraction.
Uh-huh.
But I think the pipers seem to love to come and play in Dunvegan Castle.
That's by invitation, that isn't it?
It's by invitation. It's usually the previous winner and just the top 3 or 4 pipers that are playing.
Yes. And what tunes do you play? Or have you got to submit a lot of tunes, or how's the format for that?
You submit 2 or 3 tunes and they'll pick one,
Yes.
basically, but give you time to work on it.
It's usually just one judge, is that correct?
One judge, yeah.
Aye. I remember it was Ronnie Laurie on one occasion, but I'm quite sure it's changed over the years. Many people have judged at it.
Yeah.
Have you judged at it yourself?
No, I haven't got into judging yet.
Oh, okay, quite right.
Just keeping a-
It's for old men, isn't it?
Not deaf. I'm not deaf enough. But I'm involved in the other end of Skye. We have the Donald MacDonald Cuaich.
Mm-hmm.
It's an annual competition for Pipers'Persuasion playing in the Donald MacDonald style, as
Yes.
according to his manuscript of his published tunes.
That's a fairly recent competition, isn't it? The last dozen years or so.
It's this will be the 30th.
Is it as
this
long as
year,
that?
yeah.
My goodness,
Yeah.
time flies, eh?
Mhm.
And that's a different style of Pipers'Persuasion again. Is it far different, or is it?
Not really that different, but
No.
it was the first attempt to write Pipers'Persuasion on paper, apart from Coundrach,
Uh-huh.
but to put music on the stage, to put the grace notes on the page, and the question was how much that differs from what Angus Mackay printed in 1832.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a view on that?
It's a matter of interpretation. How long some of these notes are, you have to find out what is most musically attractive.
Yeah.
And in that way, you're not asking pipers to regurgitate what they've been taught by their own teachers and reproduce almost parrot fashion. You're asking them to look at the score and interpret it and see what they think is the most musical. And some of the introductory that appeared predominantly in the Angus Mackay's book have become part of the melody, which is obviously not correct when you look at what Donald MacDonald was writing.
Interrupting the rhythm,
And
so to speak.
Yeah.
Cadences,
We could argue that there are far too many grace notes and some movements that have disappeared, but it's nice to go back and try them and see what pipers can do with them.
Yeah. So
it's a well-supported competition now.
how many people roughly compete in that one?
We invite 5 pipers every year.
Uh-huh.
This year we're going to have 6 because it's the 30th anniversary. But
Uh-huh.
and they get paid an appearance fee, and then at the moment £1,000 for the best
Well,
tune of the evening.
That's terrific. Who judges that? Do you
Well, we
number
have
of judges.
try and have a different judge every year. It'll be John Wilson this year. It was
Okay.
Dr. Jack Taylor
Yeah.
previously.
So it's quite prestigious. What do you know about the College of Piping and their site out at Borerick? Do you know anything about that?
No, I think I recall this penny for the piper, wasn't it?
Aye.
Paying the rent.
You pay a penny rent per annum for this acre of ground. The College of Piping was gifted by Dame Flora, I understand. But to play, somebody to play a tune, a pibroch, once a year at the cairn. And I understand that's not been done for a wee while.
No, I think the College of Piping, I want to
Resurrect it.
Yeah, to get it going again. And sure.
Have you played out at Borerick at all?
I've had my pipes out there and played around the cairn. Indeed.
Now, that's where allegedly the McCrimmons were from, that area, are housed or whatever.
Absolutely, yes. That's Galtrigal and the area around where the cairn is at the moment.
Yes, and they went across the loch in a boat to Dunvegan Castle to play for the MacLeods, allegedly.
They had free rent generations off them, and the patronage of MacLeod was vital to their developing Kelmore and teaching others. Although on the MacDonald side of the island, I have to say it, they also had the MacArthur School and the Donald MacDonald School as well, who they went to Dunvegan and sometimes, in fact, Patrick Hawke in fact sends somebody over to be taught the special grace notes of the MacArthurs.
So it must have been quite a burgeoning scene, the piping over that couple of centuries, and Skye I'm talking about.
Absolutely, and Skye was definitely the cradle of piping. If you consider I'm looking over to Razzie there, and Angus Mackay, John Mackay, and the people that they taught. They kept basically the MacCrimmon teaching going after the MacCrimmons had died away.
So steeped in history indeed. And discussing just before we started this conversation, who have got piping in Skye just now?
There's some very good young players that play pipes with instruments and play for performance rather than from competition. People like Angus Nicholson down in Slate. There's Angus Mackenzie who was brought up in Cape Breton, but he's married to a girl from Skye and his father was from Uist. There's Peter Morrison who plays with the Peat Bog Fairies. Some of the older pipers around, like John Mackenzie, Shaitan Mackenzie in Glenuig, was a great piper in his day, up to any of the top competitive pipers in his day in light music.
And what age is he now?
He'll be around 80.
I want to mention before we close is, I understand that you've got 2 discs with your solo piping on it. Could you just tell us about these discs and why the choice of music on them?
The first commercial recording was a Shearig Spars, or just for entertainment, basically. There's over 70 tunes on that, and basically it was a repertoire I had at the time. There's stuff that wasn't heard till then and has become popular, I suppose. Then when I came back from Canada, I recorded another one, matching Du and Donish, the Black Sticks of the Devil. Again, there's 60 or 70 tunes on that recording. I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to retire on the proceeds.
Who recorded them? What firm?
First one was Temple Records,
Uh-huh.
and then a locally based record company, MacMenama, in Skye.
Aye, they acted for quite a few different artists, didn't they?
They've put out a lot of Gaelic material
Uh-huh.
over the years, yeah.
Aye, excellent.
Were you aware of the impact that the first CD then had on piping in general, and how well it was received by some and how less well received it was by others?
No, I was in
We just-
Canada, of course, when that came out, and I really never heard anything. You know,
Uh-huh.
there was no email or Facebook in those days, and I have no idea.
But it's still in circulation and is much admired, the disc.
Yeah, well, I hope they'll continue to buy it.
But from this end, it was the first of the, if you like, the Cape Breton influenced albums that's now gone on through, the Hamish Moore's albums,
Right.
and even Shaitan talking about and Angus Mackenzie's, the stuff that he's doing with Dive, and even his solo stuff, and it all stemmed from that album. And
Right.
did
Possibly,
you,
yeah.
is that all?
I mean, I avoided that. I didn't put any Kelmore on it. I don't think people were rushing out to buy recordings of Kelmore. Maybe I certainly had some feedback. Why did I not put Kelmore on it? But I just didn't think people were looking for it.
Well, you just need to make another disc. Angus, I'm going to chuck it while I'm winning. And thank you very much for your time here this afternoon and your very kind hospitality towards Chris and I. We thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and I'm quite sure those looking into Pipers'Persuasion in the future will thoroughly enjoy watching and hopefully learn something from what you've put into it. So thanks very much, Angus.
Very good. Thank you.